Do oh, sorry.
Thank you. So I am not Dan Powers. I'm Tammy Hope, and kind of helping Dan today MC this. I know some of you out there have been a part of our webinar series before. Thank you for joining us and coming back to these, and I think you'll be excited to see what our agenda is for the 6 that we're doing. And for those of you that have not joined us before, we do these every other week. In this case, we've got 6 in the series. The invite you got originally will link you to all of the old ones. We will be recording today, and this one will be out within 24 hours out on YouTube. So again, we don't want to take a lot of your time today. We try and do these in 30 minutes. Some of the topics will take longer. I think today, the big thing about today is we have done the ebridge one before, but a lot of the folks that have attended do have ServiceNow, and they're looking for ways to integrate their enterprise applications with ServiceNow. And what we've done is quite a few updates to this, a lot of business value that you'll see. So we will go over those today. And then prior to that, I'm going to let Dan take over, and he is going to tell you what the agenda is for the whole series, and then we'll go on. Dan?
Thank you, Miss Tammy. So again, this is Dan Powers. Of course, you did hear Miss Tammy Hope speaking just a moment ago. And we welcome you into our Launch into the Spring webinar series. So today I'll be your Huckleberry. We may have some guest speakers coming up here, but I do want to go over the agenda just as Tammy had mentioned. Today, of course, we're just going to show you the new features in eBridge. I'm not going to go through all the other stuff it does. We still have those videos. And at the end of this, if people have questions, I'll certainly try to address them. But we're just going to talk about some of the new features that are in there. In March 19th, we did, and by the way, this agenda came out of our last webinar series, and we asked folks that attended to give us their feedback. What else do you want us to see? So this is really where this agenda came from. So reasons to upgrade. This was actually pretty popular. A lot of people were asking, hey, you know, I'm on this particular release. Why should I go? Should I upgrade? Should I wait for version 10? So we thought we would definitely cover that. We're hoping that the release from HCL will come out and we'll be able to actually share more information and possibly even have a representative from HCL on that webinar. But again, that's going to go around their timing. If not, we will cover some of the new features, the last couple features anyway, to see if you did like peer-to-peer nesting and things of that. So that's going to be that one. The April 2nd one I was kind of excited about. So a customer took last summer's webinar series, one of them, and actually did what we talked about. So hopefully we'll be able to get them approval, and we're going to go over monitoring your BigFix environment, what you should be monitoring, what you should be looking for, and if you have something like, you know, at SCOM or SolarWinds or whatever you're using for your enterprise monitoring, you should be monitoring your BigFix environment with those tools so they alert you when things could go wrong before they come into a big problem. Another huge one was the best practices for Linux and Unix. That was a huge ask for folks. That one is probably going to be pushing that hour webinar. At least 45 minutes is my guess. Again, we're trying to do these in 30 minutes just because we know people are busy, but there's just a lot of content. So I definitely can see that one pushing 45 minutes to an hour. April 30th, kind of excited about this one too, and we're going to have some criteria. Tammy, I think you said they have to submit by April 16th, but what this is we're asking those of you that have been on our webinar series, if you're currently struggling with a problem, it can be anything, it could be something custom to your environment. If you submit it to us, we are actually going to try to solve your problem and present it live. So you also have to be willing to maybe even talk a little bit, or tell us what your problem is. If that's an issue for your company, we can hide your company name and stuff and just kind of run through your scenario and problem. But a couple of criterias, again, we do have to get it submitted obviously 2 weeks before that date. And if it's something, or how I'm going to pick them out if we get a bunch of people throwing these at us, is if I feel there's something that a lot of people could benefit from, is probably the one that I'm going to lean towards, or if it's just really unique. So Tammy, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, just when we say April 16th, after the practices for Linux and Unix patching, we'll still leave that open for the rest of the day in case we have some new folks on that one. But if you have problems that you want to solve and you want to start submitting them, please I think, Dan, at the end, you probably have our email addresses. But one of the things that I didn't mention today, which thank you for calling me back in. If you have questions today, since you're muted, please use the question box. I am monitoring that and we'll be giving Dan those questions as they come in. So, but yeah, that was the only thing.
Alrighty, and the last one, relevance for dummies. So of course, this will probably be a little interactive. People ask questions, and again, half hour, 45 minutes. We're not going to be able to, make anybody a relevance wizard. But for those of you that are getting into more relevance, really unfolding the power of BigFix by creating some of your own content, or actually maybe just wondering why certain things work the way they do, and help you interpret relevance in general. That's what we're going to do on the last seminar. Possibly we've done this in our Jedi classes where we actually do hands-on labs. Probably we'll even create little workbooks and we'll give them out to everybody or provide a link so that you can walk through the workbook just to help yourself if you ever wanted to learn relevance a little more. So those are the main topics that people asked at our last webinar series. So we tried to accommodate you folks. So with that, let's move forward with today's story, which is the ebridge girder. So real quick, I just wanted to go back and review. As I said, I'm not going to cover all the things that the girder does for ebridge, but the concepts of this. So those folks, and I'm assuming the folks on today's webinar, you might have heard of ServiceNow, invested in ServiceNow, or something of that nature, and that's why this webinar spoke to you. But we really started doing this for quite a few years. We ourselves have a ServiceNow practice. And we had customers inevitably always asking for more integrations into their existing enterprise apps. And one of them being, for example, BigFix. ServiceNow's great platform. They really start putting their business rules in there. They have their single source of truth with the CMDB. It can get expensive, and they really want to get the best power out of the platform they invested in. So we decided to create certified applications in the ServiceNow store. So instead of just doing one-off integrations for company after company after company, to actually create something that's more shrink wrapped that you could just pull down from the store and leverage. So the idea there, of course, is that we have bi-directional capabilities inside of ServiceNow that links your BigFix environment up to ServiceNow. So the ebridge technology out of Champion has many components, meaning we do Office 365, Curator, all bunch of other things. Today, I'm just going to talk about what you get with ebridge. And the whole idea was help you do your patches, create your baselines, initiate actions, and of course, take all that wonderful data, or at least a lot of that data that sits in BigFix, and populate your CMDB. So that's really the focus here. And what I have is kind of a default dashboard view of what it would look like if you enable this inside of your ServiceNow instance. And again, as I had talked about, there's a lot of information in BigFix from your endpoints. And if you're doing discovery or not doing discovery, or doing discovery with ServiceNow, but you're only doing your core environment, you can get all those laptops, desktops, and augment other data that BigFix has to help populate that CMDB. We can enable some automation in your applications and workflows that your folks have been working on in the ITOM side of the house, right? So you may have some capabilities, for example, and I'm going to cover this today, of pushing software in a self-service capability via BigFix, right? So BigFix does a great job. If you own Lifecycle and you have all these software packages, this can all be automated in a self-service portal, saving you some time. So, and again, because you have that ServiceNow platform and we now have those hooks into ServiceNow, you're able to leverage all those workflows and the business rules that you've been developing in your ServiceNow environment, and now actually call BigFix to actually carry out some of those tasks if it's relevant, or to provide data into those workflows. So it works both ways. And at the end of the day, really what everybody's talking about, these last years and so forth is end user enablement. Make it frictionless. All those cute words we hear: frictionless for the end user, make it easy for them, self-service portal, make customer facing things just easier. So that's the goal of this. So with Tammy, do you have anything to add before I actually jump right into demo?
No, Dan, sounds great.
All right.
Keep it going.
Well, yes, ma'am, that's what I'll do. So with that, let's pull back the drawing board here and actually get into what this looks like inside of ServiceNow. So this is actually one of our demo instances in ServiceNow. And if you downloaded this application from the store, this is kind of, once you had it set up, it only takes a few minutes. This is kind of one of the default dashboards. We have a few different dashboards. We have an executive dashboard, a user dashboard, and so forth. I just picked the default one here. And a couple things that I kind of wanted to drill in and point out, like I said, I'm going to kind of show you new features, is this idea of this, and I'm going to drill in a couple times just so people can see, this idea of devices managed. So this is actually devices that came out of BigFix. So again, I can click in here, and if it lets me click in here, Danny, there we go, wrong button. So if it lets, it figures timed out just as I was doing this. Let me go back in here. Talk about being ready. I was literally just in here and it timed me out in that 3-minute waiting period of waiting to start the webinar series. So we have a lot of data in here. So that's that capability of pulling data, pulling that into your CMDB. All of these managed devices are coming directly from BigFix. So there is no ServiceNow discovering this. It's directly out of the ebridge girder. And I wanted to point out this because a couple of people had that question on the videos I did, and maybe I didn't explain it well. While we can get the unmanaged assets out of BigFix, if you guys are running that lifecycle, this particular number here is not that. What we actually have is we do have discovery running on a single subnet. And I pointed this out because I wanted to show the difference. These particular boxes actually don't have the BigFix agent. So, you know, the benefit here from a BigFix side of the house, it's showing me, yeah, I got a bunch of agents out there, but I'm also noticing whether you did discovery or brought endpoints in from another mechanism, you have some agents out there and the BigFix agent's not installed on there. So if that's your company policy, we can kick off an automation rule to actually go get the agent installed, or at least show you that you don't have some of these devices out there installed from that scenario. So that's what I wanted to point out here. People usually had that question to me quite a bit. And again, I'm just going to kind of drill in a little bit and show you what some of this stuff looks like. So I drilled into a particular group of champion, and we can see I just randomly threw some test boxes in here. We have Mac OS, Linux, Windows, and so forth. We're able to pull this data live out of BigFix, and we can populate your CMDB with this information. And we can do this in this particular environment. At one point I had about 7,000 endpoints, and I was able to pull this stuff in and keep it updated. It took about 20 minutes. So we do an initial load, and then we constantly go back and forth, and you can set up hourly, daily, weekly to keep the data in sync inside of the BigFix side. So that's the first thing I kind of wanted to point out. The other thing that we had was the idea of open tasks. So if you notice here, these are currently open tasks that are in your actions table. And I can look at this as status, which some of you, and I'll see if I can drill in here, waiting for action time, waiting for relevance, all these things, you know, you're used to. And I could also look at this just from the actions themselves, right? What am I actually doing for actions? And what I kind of want to do here is bring up the BigFix console side by side a little bit so I can see this. And a couple things to note is, I have actually a lot more actions inside of the CMDB inside of ServiceNow than I actually do at this point inside of BigFix. Here was one of the asks, right? And again, if you folks out there, you know that if you did a health check with us or HCL or IBM, if you have thousands of actions, which we certainly do about this, they're always going to tell you, try to keep the actions, if they're stopped, expires, cleaned up in BigFix, it'll make the BigFix environment run better. However, a lot of people will keep actions out here for a really long time, and their reasoning for doing so is because they want an audit trail. Well, now we can have all of these actions out here inside of the BigFix environment, and we pull this data in. We know who did it. We know the status of it. We can look at different boxes and realize, for example, this guy's waiting for the relevance. We have other boxes that could have finished or waiting to restart. I think that's that exit code. Yep. So we get to record this. And even if you come into BigFix, let me do this again real quick and bring this back up. Trying to get my windows to play nicely here. Even if I come into BigFix and I delete these actions out of BigFix, which keeps my BigFix environment running quite healthy and good, we actually don't delete it out of the ServiceNow side. So it keeps you an auditable trail of things that happened. So that was a customer ask from one of our customers to be able to do that. So we added that in there. And Tammy, you said a question came in.
Yeah, there's a couple questions that came in. So I don't know if you want to read them.
Yeah, no, go ahead. before I move on, because if it's related
Yeah,
now,
so
let's do it.
I don't want to get too far away because we're talking about devices unmanaged. So where does the information for devices unmanaged come from outside of BigFix?
Okay, so again, because you can have multiple ways to load data into ServiceNow, as I had mentioned before, right? ServiceNow has its own discovery. A lot of people do run their discovery. It works really well. It can get expensive, and their discovery sometimes, when you're talking those mobile users, the desktops, the laptops, the mobile workforce, right? Their discovery really can't keep that up to date, if at all. But something like BigFix, right? We all know, hey, I can put a relay in the DMZ. I can manage you wherever you are in the world. As long as you're on the internet, I'm going to be able to get to you. That's the power of that capability. So in this particular case, to get right down to it, is for this example, I had turned on Discovery, ServiceNow's Discovery, and I targeted just a single subnet where I knew I actually didn't deploy the agent. I did it on purpose for this demo. So that's where that information is coming from ServiceNow. However, if you have other integrations, or you can even load data into your CMDB by hand, if you did that, that's where that difference would come from. We're just detecting that, hey, we looked at this device, it got loaded here somehow, and we're noticing that the BigFix agent is not here. So that's where we're popping out that they're just unmanaged from a BigFix BigFix perspective. Because again, I'm in the BigFix dashboard, right? So my scope here is, hey, what's all related to BigFix? Does that, hopefully that answers the person's question. Does that sound like it answered it, Tammy?
Yeah, Dan, I think that was the answer to that one. Then you have a couple more that have come in. If we can just do this real quick. How often is ebridge extracting data from BigFix to update its dashboard?
Okay, well, I was going to save this. Let me just jump into here. So we do, again, another ask. We had folks ask us to present better, right? We always logged everything, but we came up with this, and we'll probably turn this into some type of dashboard, like a graph view, right? Because there's a lot of records here. If I scroll down, I'm probably going to see, even my dev environment. I reloaded this 12,000. So by default, when we first go into your environment, right, depending on the size that you are, we kind of kick off a default load. That's the biggest first impact to your system. We actually do leverage the REST API wherever we can. However, there's a couple of these that are basically we really have to do the initial load via SQL call. The REST API just wasn't doing it, especially if you have over 10,000 endpoints. So that's how that happens. Now, after that, we do the synchronous calls, right? And if you can see here, and the reason I came in here, we're adding attributes at 15, 16 seconds, right? These are actually going really, really quick. Now, if I could do this at the moment, let me see if I can remember, because I always misspell this one. Computer load all computers, I think. Hey, here we go. So there we go. This is kind of cool. So these are kicking off different tasks, how many they're trying to grab. So this one particularly 200 devices. Hey, I did it in a few minutes, right? 5 minutes, which is actually pretty acceptable. If you really think about the data moving, it's going through the mid server. The other thing to note here, is my environment, and I'm just going to bring up the BigFix console here again, is actually running in Azure. Right, so this is actually not on premise at the moment for us. This just happens to exist in our Azure instance. So this is cloud talking to cloud, this whole integration we got going here. And when we're pulling, a bunch of these counts, you can see them here, and it did a batch run, and it did it in 5 minutes. I was able to stress test this. And again, the reason I pointed it up to our cloud instance, because we had a lot more devices. We had about 8,000 at one point that I had loaded up there, put the data in there, and a lot of them were VMs that got killed, but the data still existed in BigFix for the stress test. We were doing an 8,000 load, and it took us about 19 minutes. So after that, we have by default configuration where you can do hourly, daily, and biweekly and weekly, I think is the default. You can go change those, right? You can be anything you want. Our goal was to be able to say, hey, we can keep the relevant data. For example, the actions that I was showing you, pulling those actions, I want to be able to pull those, 2 or 3 times an hour, right? I don't want to do it every 2 seconds, but if you kick off an action, I'm going to assume it's going to be in your actions tab for, at least an hour, 30 minutes before you go stop it and delete it. We will capture that and pull it in. So you have the ability, depending on what you're looking for, to actually adjust the settings of how you pull it. And it's one of the reasons, and again, customer asked, that we came up with this thing so we could tell, hey, on computer groups, on sites, on devices themselves, on attributes, on actions, can I control how often we pull this data in? So hopefully I answered that question. I went into probably a little more detail than I meant to, but I was going to show you that that ask anyway, because it was a new feature and asked by a company. So cool. Oh, so the device is coming in from ServiceNow Discovery feature. Does it check for port 52311? Yeah, that is what we're doing, and we're also looking if the data that you pulled in from that, again, because it can be, remember, it can be from multiple sources. It could be from ServiceNow. You could have manually entered it and so forth. If you're also tracking installed software, we also check to see if the BES client's installed. So we do both, actually. So that was the other question you had there, Tammy, about port 52311. So hopefully I answered those. And now where was I? Oh, the other ask. So I kind of covered what these were, right? I kind of covered, we have this tracking. So we threw this pretty bar in here to see what's going on. But it's kind of nice. And the reason it's also kind of nice, if you think about it, if somebody called into the help desk and said, hey, I'm having a problem, my SAP app's not running. Now that we have that action history on the devices, and again, I showed it from a high dashboard level, I could drill into a computer and I can see the action history, at least from the BigFix side, of everything that's happened to that box. So a help desk person might be able to go in there and say, well, we did notice that your machine was patched last night, or we did notice that your Java got updated, right? Maybe that's the reason your SAP app is busted, or why you're getting that error message when you try to launch SAP, because that's happened quite a bit. Tammy's giving me the couple minutes finger, so I gotta move on. The other cool thing that I really wanted to show you, and I'm going to try to put these guys side by side. Don't go bigger on me. Was this idea, as I had mentioned, self-service, right? Everybody's trying to do that inside of ServiceNow, and a quick hit task. So a couple things that we did. One is we were trying to make this work in anybody's BigFix environment. And again, those BigFix guys out there, you know, I love BigFix, but how you did something could have been totally different how I did something, even though they accomplished the same goal. So a couple of the struggles was, how do we do things out of the box that can work anywhere? And I didn't want to edit configuration files anymore. I wanted to be able to make this very, very simple to the end user, as we talked about, but also to the BigFix and ServiceNow folks. So we came up with this concept, and this was an ask. So we have two self-service little panels here. By the way, you know, normally this would exist in your service catalog, your self-service portal. I put it up here just for demo purposes, but it kind of shows us what we're doing is an automation task. So the idea here of this particular customer came back to us and said, listen, we're also ingesting data from the QRadar app that we have. We're getting offenses. If something happens, I want my SOC level 1 guy, or maybe my help desk person, to do what they called a quick hit, meaning log a user off a box, quarantine a process, quarantine a machine, reboot a box, right? So we said, okay, how do we do this and keep it up to date? So what I asked for is said, okay, let's create a site. And again, we hardwired this, ebridge automation. I'm assuming nobody has a custom site named that at this point. If you create this site and you put any fixlets and tasks in there, we will automatically populate this widget. And because this widget is now in the background, you could put this on anything. I could drill into a computer and I could have this pop up show up if I am a level 1 admin guy. And if you notice, and I'm going to pick something very benign, communication test. It just does a ping because I don't want to do anything worse. And of course, I'm administrator. I'm logged in as God at the moment, so I can pick any box I desire. And watch what happens. And I'm going to move back up just so we can see it in real time. Back to the actions tab. So I got something up there. Let's execute this action from ServiceNow. And it's saying, okay, we executed this. It's now going to be run through your mid server and shoot over to your BigFix environment and watch it. And again, since we're watching those open action tabs, we're going to be able to update this status. So if I click OK there, bada bang, right there, we can see that there was the ebridge communication test. He knows which box I picked. And I'm going to move this slightly over this way just so we can all see it. And I actually may have to expand my window here. Yeah, I'm going to just makes it easier on all of us. Notice we kicked off that communication test. It came out of ebridge automation and it was issued by ebridge. So even from the BigFix side of the house, hey, I want to know what kicked off. If I see a bunch of things happening here, I want to know where it came from. So we have this idea that it's coming in via ebridge. The BigFix guys know it's automation that was kicked off. So it makes that kind of nice in that respective, and we can track that. The same idea, and I'm going to go through this quicker because I can hear my alarm starting to go off, is that same type of idea we can carry forth to self-service software. Same idea. Create a custom site, ebridge:software. If you take some of your existing software packages and just copy the fixlet or task into this site, it's automatically going to update this task widget, which again can be anywhere in your service catalog. It could be on the devices themselves. Now, the same idea, I am admin, right? So I can come in here and pick any box because I have global rights. But if in a self-service scenario, ServiceNow would know I logged in as Dan Powers, and I would only have 3 devices show up, the devices that are assigned to me, my laptop, my Surface Pro, and my phone, right? And if I pick something like deploy Firefox, I could shoot that off to my particular device and it would go deploy Firefox. In this particular example, it's not costing the company any money. It's a company approved piece of software. Otherwise, why would I have it listed here? No workflow, right? Just go do it. Or maybe I only deploy software after 5 o'clock for whatever reason, right? But if it was something that actually costs money, and I'll take that one off, this may then initiate, again, back to ServiceNow, your business workflows. Hey, maybe it needs manager approval. Well, who's Dan's manager? That's Mark. Mark has to approve it. He can approve it on his phone. So we're leveraging the ServiceNow platform to do what it does awesome. And where ServiceNow, we're giving you some of that orchestration capability. That's the word ServiceNow would use, or automation, back into BigFix. So you're able to really call any BigFix tasks you like. For the cases of automation, software distribution, some patch management, we're creating these specific sites, but ebridge does allow you to do any call back into ServiceNow that, back into BigFix that you want to do. So again, quick idea of what that self-service is. A couple other things I want to click on real quick, and I know we're already at the 30-minute marker, but I'm going to do it anyway. All of the girders that we created, right, was, well, okay, we did this. Are we using it? Are we getting any value out of it? So originally we just tracked, hey, we did these transactions, and we kind of just tracked them and threw them in a pretty chart. So we added the idea that you could have, by default, we just came up with 3. We did, we know everybody's going to be different. Hey, we have your basic self-service user, we have an operator, or we have more of an admin, like the level 2, level 3 guy, that you could put dollar amounts around. So all the actions that are happening inside of ebridge at this point from ServiceNow, we're tracking, right? So the cool part of this is you can say, well, what's the most thing being used? Well, right now it's self-service software people are pulling down, right? We got some service requests, but we also had some ebridge automation going on here as well. And we can start tracking based on the dollar amount you put in. Hey, this is what we're saving you, right? If you didn't have this automation, this would either be a ticket, a phone call, an email. I would have to call Tammy up and ask her to go do something. That's taking her time up, and she's a level 2, level 3 person. I'd rather have my help desk do it, or the best scenario, have my users do it for themselves, self-service, right? That's the whole point of all of this. Tammy, I know I was going to talk about 1 or 2 other things, but I know we're running out of time. Is there any other questions on some of these things that came in?
Yeah, I don't see any new questions, but folks, if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to put them in. And if you have anything else to show, Dan, we'll let everybody know. We did hit the 30-minute mark, but as we've said before, we are recording. So if you have to leave us, you can get the full recording. We'll send it out within the next 24 hours. If you want to stay and you have questions, by all means, please ask. So Dan, maybe you can go over one more thing as people can stay on, or if they leave, they know they'll get a copy of it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll look at here, right? Because this was an ask a few people had asked. Hey, how hard is it to set this up? Again, it is a certified app in the store, so you can request it out of the ServiceNow store. You can request a demo or directly from us. I am telling you, we got some new dashboards and some of those new features are going into the store. We're submitting that into ServiceNow sometime this week. Actually, it's already what is it, Thursday? So I think for tomorrow. At that point, it's kind of up to ServiceNow. They usually get it done. They'll test it, make sure that things are working on the new release of Orlando, and then they'll release the update into the store. So I'm guessing within 2 weeks. It should really be a week, but I'm going to say 2 weeks. So some of those new features, if you're interested in this, we can certainly do a deeper dive, discuss with you, do a demo, whatever you like. But I would encourage, hey, get the new release that's coming out. But I brought this up. This is one of the things you would have to do. So once you pull it down from the store, you enable it in ServiceNow, you literally just have to come in here and fill this out. And that's as hard as it is. And most of the stuff you don't have to fill out. But as the one person had asked, right? Hey, what are the default things that I can do here? I'm currently using my mid server, right? I pick the mid server that I'm talking to. I pick my, this is the one I meant to click, right? By default, we have these 3 scenarios. This is the overall run of the BigFix girder. Am I doing everything hourly? Am I doing it daily? Am I doing it weekly? I'm currently doing this in an hourly fashion. As you saw, we have about 5,000 so endpoints. It's working just fine. It's not stress testing anybody out, and I'm not having an issue whatsoever. If you're in an environment with 30,000 endpoints, then we would have to get a little granular and probably say, hey, do we move this down to daily? But then we tell the actions tab to update at least once an hour. Those are the tweaking type of things, and it really comes down to how large your environment is, to be honest with you. So I did want to walk over that, but literally you would save this out, have the app ready to go. And again, obviously we're talking through the API. We have to have the database instance where it's going to. Pretty much that's it. And once you put those pieces and parts into place and the first data set runs and loads, the dashboards that we have and all these different components are going to start self-populating, and you're good to go.
So Dan, we do have one question that is, I'm definitely leaning on you to answer, but I think you know it right away. What is the difference between ebridge and Hiro?
Oh, so huge differences. And by the way, this was kind of a joke, but you could call Tammy with any questions 24/7. That's her cell phone number.
That's not a cell number, Dan.
I know it's not. I was kidding. So ebridge and Hiro. So Hiro's totally different. What Hiro is doing from HCL, right, is it's helping you walk through your BigFix environment, kind of like a monitoring and kind of doing a health check, if you will. Are your relays set up correctly? Are the caches right? Do you have issues in your logs? So it's a really cool. Now I'm going to say this with, I haven't played with Hiro now since December, as I think the last time I touched it, and I know they were doing some updates to it. So there's not really an integration, at least when I played with it, at all into ServiceNow. I know HCL is looking at that, but they're kind of, from my perspective, what they're doing, right? They obviously concentrated on version 10 of BigFix. That's where they're going. They're going to provide kind of an integration hooks like IBM did in the past into ServiceNow, but they never made a certified app there, and I don't think that it's on their plans either. But again, the difference between Hiro and ebridge's sole purpose was to bring an integration into ServiceNow. Now, on top of that, we do have, I didn't show it there, but we do have kind of a whole health check inside of ServiceNow. Since we got your data, we were looking at, hey, are your relays online? How many endpoints haven't talked to you in the last 30 days? So we do have some of those default reports that kind of give you a mini health check of your BigFix environment. The other difference in Hiro, which was kind of cool, which they did do really well, was if there are issues, they have kind of these run books that are available to you to tell you what to go fix or maybe what you should have gone and reconfigured or changed, right? So they really are 2 different things at the end of the day. So that's so from that perspective, like I said, Hiro is a great little add-on tool. It's really to monitor your ServiceNow environment. It's really to help you have run books of best practices. That's the intention of Hiro. ServiceNow, of course.
Dan, just a quick correction. You said it was there to monitor ServiceNow. I think you meant it's there to monitor BigFix.
Yeah, I
Yep.
apologize. I got ServiceNow on the brain at this point, right?
Yep. Just wanted to make sure because it does not monitor ServiceNow.
Correct, and it's a little bit different. And again, we will have that webinar coming up with the users that had taken our one webinar of what to monitor in BigFix, and actually did it in their enterprise monitoring solution. So whoever had asked that question, you may want to jump on that webinar. I think that's the third one coming up, if I'm not mistaken. It might explain some of that as well. So we have anything else out there, Miss Tammy?
Yeah, Dan, I think there's no more questions at this time, and it looks like all of you stayed, so thank you for staying with us. Look forward to seeing you on March 19th.
Correct. And if you do have an interest, if you guys are ServiceNow customers, you're looking for this, again, the benefit of the self-service, being able to do some orchestration back in the BigFix is the customers we currently have are loving it. Again, and expanding that CMDB. For a lot of our customers, we're not replacing any type of orchestration or discovery in ServiceNow. We're complementing it. And in my opinion, I think the ServiceNow folks like what we're doing, because if you're currently not doing a lot of ITOM and orchestration inside of ServiceNow, and you could leverage some of the capabilities of talking to BigFix to help you with your patches or software distribution, once you start doing that in your environment, we get customers that really want to start automating everything else, right? So I think it's beneficial for everybody involved.
And one last comment, Dan and I will be at Knowledge 2020, so I don't know if anybody on the phone is attending or not, but if your ServiceNow folks are and you want to send them our way, contact us through the questions, or it's very easy for you to find us at Champion. It's either T-Hope or dpowers@championsg.com, and be happy to meet anyone at Knowledge 2020 as well.
So I just had a thought, Tammy, as you said that. So they're hosting Knowledge in Orlando, and I wonder if that has any impact on the new release of ServiceNow, of why they called it Orlando. I don't know why that just occurred to me. Anyway.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for attending, everyone. Have a great day.